It's now time to see how the home-safe Clematis, Daffodil, Hellebore and Cyclamen seed that I collected and sowed back last summer has survived the winter. The seedlings spent the winter holidaying in this little lantern cloche that I have. I always water the pots and trays of compost before I sow the seed. Then after that, this should be enough up until germination time, to make sure they're thoroughly soaked and allowed to drain. This is Clematis Bill Mackenzie, one of the tangutica orientalis group, commonly known as Old Man's Beard or the orange-peeled clematis. The seed, as you can see, has got very, very light, fluffy parachutes on top, and the slightest breeze blows it everywhere, which of course is designed to help its distribution. I just like to tidy them up before I begin to collect the seed, but as you can see, this job is best done on a still day or indoors. But it was such a pleasant afternoon, I was reluctant to give in. So when they're ready, just gently peel them away, and they come off quite readily, and you can see them with a little fluffy bit on top and the seed at the bottom. There's no need to trim the parachutes or feathery bits away. You can leave them on. It actually makes the seed easier to handle when it comes to spreading them on top of the compost. They come apart quite easily when they're red. You can see them coming away, and there's no doubt that the seed can be sown straight away. Once you've satisfied that you've cleaned all the seed up, just gather it together, and the next job is to collect your seed tray that you watered previously and have allowed to drain, and you're ready to go. If you look around, you'll find there are several different theories and methods for sowing seed. I choose to do this as I would sow ordinary seed. If you think about it, in nature, the seed will get blown across fields into hedgerows, picked up by animals, so I don't fuss. The main problem you got is spreading the seed and getting it to stay where it should be. Sometimes you wish you had free hands, but if you persist, eventually you'll get there, and you spread it across. And the next thing to do really is to sort of just weigh the seed down lightly. You could use grit if you wanted to, but I didn't have any to hand, so I just used a couple of handfuls of compost spread lightly across the top. And then you just need to press the seed into the surface of the damp compost underneath so that the seed really gets a chance to swell and germinate. And you'll be surprised, you don't need to water them anymore. And in a moment, I'll put a top dressing on and level it off and give that a little pressing just to create a neat level top. And what you will find is overnight that the seed will, the compost will become damp purely simply by capillary action, and that's all you need to do. I then stood the seed tray in the shade, left it outside for most of summer, just kept it fairly cool, and so it wouldn't be too hot, and let it go like that. And then during the winter time, I kept it exposed as much of the winter weather as possible. But I must admit, I had a shock when I lifted the lid during December, and you could see the seed that had germinated, most of it had rotted off, and there were a couple just left, as you can see, sitting on the surface. So I immediately took the cover off on warm days, windy days, so that the compost would dry out to get the plants through the winter time. And this is in January. You can see it's beginning to dry, and by March this had happened. The compost was completely dry, but it looks as if it's made up of two distinct halves. The good thing was, as you can see, some of the seedlings are beginning to grow, and I'll prick these out as soon as I can, and the rest I hope will just fill in. And in a few years' time, who knows, we may have this. A word of warning though, that whenever you grow from seed, there's always a strong chance that you may not get a plant identical to the parents. Hellebores are great plants for flowering from midwinter right away through until late spring, early summer, and they'll set seed quite readily, and by June they're ready for harvesting. So gather the seed as soon as you can, because these plants will quite happily sell seed everywhere. So collect it all together, and you'll be surprised how much seed you can get from a couple of flowers, and get ready to sow it. Once again, we're using the pre-moistened compost again, and you can see how much seed is in the hand there. So tap it thinly across the surface, working from one end into the other. One thing nature does is she tends to over-provide to produce more seed than you would want. And then once the tray is complete, all you need to do is to press the seed into the surface of the damp compost, and this will help swell the seed to ensure that you get early germination. Not all of the seed will germinate at once, because one thing I've discovered that seed like this will germinate at different times: early winter, midwinter, late winter, and spring. This is a very sort of cunning survival mechanism to show that at least if some seeds survive and grow on into mature plants. But once again, when I lifted the lid of the lantern cloche in the middle of the winter, I had the same problem as before. You could see the seed was just beginning to germinate, but the compost was over wet. So I did they were in the same position. So they dried out, and the compost slowly recovered, and you can just about see the seed germinating. By mid-May, the compost was still dry, but the seedlings had grown quite well, and I plunged them into a bath of water to soak the compost, and even more seeds germinated, so we've more plants to look forward to. There are literally thousands of cultivars of daffodils, but I only save seed from the ovularis, which is the Welsh daffodil, and lobularis, which is the English daffodil, because they're quite neat and they will spread by seed and offsets, so you can increase your clumps quite readily. But here you can see the little black jewels inside the seed capsule there, and they're ready for harvesting. And collect them as soon as you can, and I like to sow them almost within the day, so get them all together, and once again you will get quite a lot of seed from a few plants. Sow the seed as thinly as you can across the top of the compost. It doesn't take much, as you can see, a small handful here to fill a 9 centimetre pot, and I'm using a shallow pot because I don't want the seeds sitting on a big lump of cold wet compost. Tap them gently from the hand, spreading them out. And when you're satisfied that you've got rid of all the seed, you then, as before, lightly press the seed into the damp surface of the compost. You know why? It's to swell the seed and get it germinating as quickly as possible. It doesn't mean they'll germinate straight away, but it does stop the seed from drying out. And because these will be outside for a long time, I like to cover them either with a little bit of compost or grit. And I had just enough grit left over to cover the narcissus seed. These are 2 or 3 millimetre, 1/8 of an inch, that's all you need. And once again, lightly press the grit into the surface of the compost so it stays moist as well. And all you need to do is to stand it in the cool shade of a north wall or fence, just to prevent the sun from drying the compost out. But this time, when I opened the lantern, I was quite pleasantly surprised to see the seed germinating. You can see it looks just like onions, and it grows quite rapidly, and by May you can see what we had is like grass, but these are seed leaves, and I'm waiting now for the true leaves to begin to grow, and then we're ready for potting on. We now move on to the cyclamen, which are autumn-winter flowering, and sometimes you will get some flowers during the summer. All depends what the season's like. But the seed capsule needs to be open. This one is closed. You can't see the seed yet. But when you look like this, the seed is ripe and ready for dispersal, and that's when it's time to gather it. You can see it this. But one thing you have to do is to soak the seed for 24-48 hours, because it's covered in an inhibitor which prevents it from germinating. After soaking, I drained the seed through a sieve and dried it in kitchen paper before sowing in the seed trays. One lot of seed is for 24 hours and one is 48. But I found there was no difference at all. The seed germinated quite rapidly. In a matter of weeks, really, they were through by September. And as you can see here, by November, they were quite a large size, well before I put them into the lantern cloche for winter time. Did suffer with the cold and the wet of the winter time, but not many losses. But as I say, you can see there's more than enough there to keep me going for the next couple of years. My plant raising facilities are quite primitive. All I've had access to has been this little lantern cloche, which will hold 4 half seed trays. The main problem I find is the wet rather than the cold, so you must manage the moisture levels in the compost and ventilate to prevent it from sweating, which I think led to most of the losses that I felt. I'm now looking forward to coaxing them on a little bit more, and as soon as they're large enough to handle, to pot them on and grow them on ready. I don't want many, 2 or 3 of each, and I'll be happy. Diolch, and thank you for watching. Goodbye for now, but if you would like to see any more, please hit the subscribe and like buttons.